Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. Everyone is waiting with bated breath in terms of what government economic policy will be for the rest of the year. How is government going to raise the required revenue or money and spend as well as for this year? But in all of this, what are the expectations of the manufacturing sector as well as industry when it comes to the 2025 budget? What do you also tell those who argue that looking at the fact that we have an IMF program, we should be measured with our expectations? Well, on PM Express Business Edition, it's about the 2025 budget and the manufacturing sector. What do they want? My guest on PM Express Business Edition is Dr. Humphrey Ayim-Darke. He's president of the Taxation of Ghana Industries. I'll be getting his thoughts on his expectations, the 2025 budget, and a lot of things that are happening in the economy as we speak right now. This is PM Express Business Edition. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome to PM Express Business Edition as we look at the 2025 budget. And it's still a series of conversations on the budget on PM Express Business Edition. As all other things being equal, the Finance Minister, Dr. Ataforson, should go to Parliament and present that economic policy to Parliament on March 11, 2025. But what is the take of the manufacturing and industry when it comes to the budget? Dr. Humphrey Ayim-Darke is the president of the Taxation of Ghana Industries and is my guest on PM Express Business Edition. Doc, thank you so much for your time. And how are things going, Doc?
Well, it's a new era, it's a new dawn, and then we welcome the stage we find ourselves, and it's a set of mind. So we tagging along and coming in with innovative ideas, bold ideas to engage government and see how together we can collaborate and support government's reset agenda.
A lot of things have happened even today. Let's first start with the daily minimum wage and also the base pay as well. I mean, there's a question about the private sector's ability to pay, because the argument is that it often forms the basis for an increment for some people in the private sector to push for an increment. What do you make of these developments, looking at the current state of the economy and the argument that often minimum wage could serve as a benchmark for those in the private sector to also push for an increment as well? What do you make of these developments that happened today?
Well, largely, I can attest to it that most of formalized enterprises pay above minimum wage anyway. When you do the computation per the 10% increment and you multiply it by the number of days of work, it's way above a 500 cedis per minimum wage. And our factory hands largely pay above that. I do not see that to distort our pay structure. Yes, it adds further burden in terms of cost, but I believe most formalized enterprises are paying above that, and that shouldn't be as a difficulty irrespective of the state of the economy. Yes, our cost input from the labor section will change. Some will take advantage to renegotiate, but most sensitive employers, considering the events of the inflationary rates in the recent past that drove up almost to 52 and trickled down, we were sensitive and then did adjustment accordingly. So I do not believe at this stage the minimum wage that has been increased will significantly distort our financials.
I get that most of your members have already done that review already, so it will be difficult for a Georgia, if you're working in your factory, to come and say that based on this, can you take a second look at our salary levels?
Then I'll give you a reference, because in our HR department, there are structured review periods, and there are various factors that lead to the review, including inflationary rates, cost of living allowances, utility pricing. So whilst the events were playing out a couple of years ago, a number of enterprises did some significant adjustment. So if you come at this stage and say that by virtue of today's adjustment in pricing, we should go back and review. If you have a structured system, your HR department will defend you and the leadership of the various groups in there. Yes, there might be some groups that are really squeezing their workers, but it's to your own detriment. If you do so, you realize that there'll be a lot of pilfering and a lot of absenteeism and high retention rates in your enterprise. So once you take good care of your team, you could go to sleep and you manage yourself.
Mr. Daka, I know you employ people as well in the private capacity as well. Do I get the understanding that somewhere last year, you did these reviews for this year already?
Absolutely.
And that was done somewhere. When was this done?
We have a review period between May and June. And therefore, every May, June, the team comes to look to the table. When we could tie your 13th month to performance by the organization, when your team and your output outweighs the previous year's engagement, you do some performance appraisal and increase. So to us, every May to June, we do this adjustment, and we have done it.
But what about when it comes to your members, those who might be working, the contractual workers and all the rest? Are they also being paid above this daily minimum wage and getting the right compensation?
Yes, what I'm saying does not cut across every sector. There are some sectors like the construction and where there are manual labor interventions and operations, agriculture space where they do a lot of picking and a lot of agribusiness may have some variations. But largely, I believe that most of our enterprises that are well formalized pay above the minimum wage.
Today we engaged the chief executive of the Ghana Employers Association, and he was making a case that they would have wished for a no increment, looking at the current state of the economy. For those firms that have not already reviewed their conditions of service and maybe they are in the process of finalizing it, do you think that they are in the state to take care of anybody, any union or any group in their organization coming forward to say that based on this, can we tweak some of these benefits that we're enjoying?
Yeah, to the extent that you know the cost center of your labor and you know the overall revenue structure of your cost of production, then you need to factor in and see how significant this percentage will affect your net, the bottom line. Once you do that, where it is pretty difficult as a result of a shrinked market by virtue of a significant import and your output is dropping, then you are forced to go onto the table and engage. That look, our market size has shrunk, and therefore the labor input and the increment may be significantly eating your cost center in labor. Then you go into negotiation with your team. So every sector will have an engagement. Like the brewery company, beverage companies are having a lot of challenges from import and exchange rate related issues. What is the extent of labor costs in their production line? Then that becomes a unique issue to engage in that sector.
Mr. Daka, is it right for those who would argue that the employer, those of you who employ a large number of people, would always want to find excuses in these times? Because despite these challenges, some of your members and some of your firm, if I cannot go back for your company, it's not a public firm, I don't know your numbers, but despite these challenges, some of them are posting quite decent profits and revenue as well. So where comes in the challenging environment, and we have to manage our expectations as workers?
Oh, but generally, we should realize that every enterprise is in there to make profit. So with that profit-oriented mindset, you need to work your numbers. So the effect will be the competition. What is the market share that you used to command significantly? What is it today? How would you cut costs to still maintain some reasonable margins such that your shareholders will be excited? So it becomes an issue of strategic management that each enterprise promoter will need to look at carefully to make sure he's above what we call the significant profit, not supernormal profit. Years back, you would have a supernormal profit. But once you are making marginal gains to keep your business model ongoing, you stick to it, where you could deploy new technology as a way of managing your labor, do a lot of production within a period and then break, and then look at what the market dynamics are. There are various models that entrepreneurs deploy to make sure they keep themselves afloat.
Today, the president, during the engagement to the organized labor, also told the finance minister that go ahead and cut as much as you can because of the current challenges that we are going through. For you, there are some who are worried because of the impact on capital expenditure. And in every economy, or there's a school of thought that government need to spend to stimulate growth. From industry's perspective, are you worried by this development, or again, it sends a signal of prudent management of the economy and therefore it is a good thing?
Well, I mean, it's a chicken and egg situation. We all keep saying that government needs to cut expenditure because government is about 60% the procurement agent in town, and most enterprises, one way or the other, are tied to government. So depending on how much government cuts, that could affect the economy in terms of consumption, stimulating the economy and the productivity-related issues. But however, the flip side is that it could also create an opportunity for private-public partnership arrangements, where government hasn't got capacity and is cutting down on some areas or delegated authority areas under the agencies. Then you shape it into PPP, and then you could then take advantage of that capital expenditure or the expenditure cut and create an opportunity for the private sector to engage. So yes, it's good for government to cut its expenditure to the revenue size so that we can manage the deficit, because the complication and the cyclical effect of the deficit and then derailing the macroeconomic gains as a result of the borrowing, it's really significant. So we welcome the instructions of the president to the finance minister to cut. What are the options? Cut in areas that you could offload those fiscal or capital expenditure items like road infrastructure. Why don't you then convert it to a private sector engagement, and the PPP will take it over and complement government? You could go on and on infrastructure that government could cut off and offload it to private sector. So the cutting of such expenditure should be focused in areas that private sector could bring in funding and structure.
But for you, the signaling effect, it gives you some excitement because then it could lead to managing the deficit, right?
Of course, because that is one of the biggest elephants in the room, derailing all the gains once the debt position of the economy and the exchange rate changes, and then the the debt position derails all our opportunities to get commercial funding for government. And however, the flip side is that it gives the private sector an opportunity to put in proposal for private sector engagement.
We are not on the international market yet, but we are still servicing debt. I know that in the past, these comments have come and the finance ministers have come to manage it. The government or the president today said that seeing the numbers further, you would describe how things have been done as Ghana being a crime scene, and the situation is worse than they thought. The flip side is that you're on the market or you are still servicing debt. The signal is that whether it paints a bad situation when it comes to the deficit and whether you'll be able, even in a position to settle your debts. As a businessman, as industry, are you worried about the signaling effect of saying that things are bad than we thought, and whether that could also have an impact on government finances going forward?
There are two schools of thought. Today, with the globalized world and the info technology and the fifth revolution, look, every information is there anyway. And therefore, to what extent...
You don't need the president to
You don't need the president to rock the boat by declaring the state of the economy.
As a crime scene.
As a crime scene. We know there were a number of issues. Let the chips fall where they are needed. Let there be sanctions to bring revolution and the reset up agenda that the president promised in his campaign. So I'll be of the school of thought that, yes, demonstrate this and let it be a signal to the new incoming team that this is not the way to go. We cannot suggest that they are crime scene and you seek to hide it.
People should be punished if it's
Sanctions.
Established that
that is
people
the
have
only way to
spent
correct
money,
the system.
not approved, and all the rest.
Sanctions, that's why there are laws. So if the president doesn't demonstrate that capacity, then worse will befall him before he exits power.
2025 budget, all other things being equal, March 11. For industries, what are their main talking points going into this budget, where already the Minister of Finance has been given a blank check that cuts everywhere you want? I mean, what are your expectations as the Minister gets ready to prepare for this budget on March 11, 2025?
Well, with the current development, and if we have adopted the reset agenda, manufacturing companies also believe the said reset agenda should be part of the engagement and the reforms. One clear position that we seek to table strongly. And tomorrow, we'll have an opportunity to engage the Honorable Setekwe, who's the advisor on the economy, and also Mr. Guzitando, who's also in charge of our economy and export. However, we have a number of distressed companies. So distressed that our enterprises are really frustrated for the external shocks in the past few years. And came in the IMF that gave you some confidence and some stability that we are enjoying. However, the fundamentals are still weak. The structural reforms have not really delivered as we expected. And even though there are some reforms and policy initiatives like the currently the reset agenda says gold board, it's resonating, I'm told, significantly, and the gains, I'm told, are impressive. And as that rolls out, our number one proposal, and we're seeking to do this through GARIA. GARIA is the Ghana Association of Restructuring and Insolvency Advisors. I'm told they have now moved to the state to be an institute. And their main agenda is to assist distressed companies to reshape. And in one of the advocacy and in one of the engagement with Bank of Ghana and the commercial banks and the insurance companies is that, yes, so we are aiding a lot of companies that are in distressed position. And the distressed position does not mean that their business models are bad, but as a result of the constraints, they have difficult cash flow related issues regarding all the economic structures and the economic systems that we found with multiple taxations. That's some of the taxes we have been over the period discussing, the VAT structure, which had the standard rate and the flat rate, and it has distorted two companies in the same sector. However, this VAT position distorts them because some are paying the flat rate, some are paying the standard rate. It has its own complications. We'll get to discuss it. So GARIA seeks to table to the Bank of Ghana that there are a number of distressed companies in Ghana. Granted that we help them restructure, they need fresh capital injection into their companies. How do you treat these fresh capitals that come in? How do you ring fence the old debts? Because most of them are highly geared. And therefore, lending to them when you go to the credit bureau will demonstrate today that most enterprises and individuals playing in the business space has difficulties. So therefore, the GARIA is engaging BOG so that we could have a space to give a better treatment to fresh capital, ring fence the old one, and with the commercial banks, how then do you use your cash flow and the gains out of the recapitalization to service this? This needs an engagement.
So I get from you that you want some level of support from government to revive some ailing industries.
And this is policy.
And this is one of your proposals you're pushing
Yes,
across.
we are putting it across.
But someone's saying that, where's the money going to come from?
So bear in
How
mind,
do you want this thing to be done? Doc.
Step one, it's policy. It's not putting in capital. So you go to BOG.
So what policy are you looking for to revive some of these industries?
So you got to engage Felix Addo, who's the president of GARIA. How do you seek to make this case?
That's a proposal coming from you.
There are enterprises, there are funds all over the place. However, they will state clearly that if you are overgeared, when you go to the credit bureau system and they see that, look, your records are bad, but you have a good business model. However, the tax systems, the exchange rate fluctuation, and the high inflation has distorted your business. And most enterprises had gone down as a result of the external factors from COVID, for financial reforms, and many externalities that had hit most of the manufacturing and other enterprises. So you realize that in one of the campaign messages, one of the candidates indicated of amnesty, tax amnesty. When you grant tax amnesty and you do not find a way to treat the insolvent companies that are overgeared, to treat the fresh capital that comes into the system, they take the money and they go back to service the old debt, which is not protected in law, and therefore there will be demand notice served on these enterprises, and therefore even though you are putting in money, it's difficult to re-expand. Our case through GARIA is that how do you treat distressed companies? And I'm focusing on distressed companies because if you do startups, the startups will still go through the same learning curve. Most of these enterprises have gone through this learning curve and corrections. So why don't you ring fence most of their difficulties, which is their non-performing loans? and then give them a fresh start. That is why some sought to do tax amnesty. But tax amnesty is not sufficient because there are debt on their books through Garia. That is one of our
so this won't come with injection of fresh
capital. So then
it's more of a policy.
Then the enterprise then goes back to its commercial banks, and then all the funding agencies. And then they look at the model you were treating and look at the difficulties you had. And you're going through Garia that gives an independent opinion. Once that is structured through an independent opinion, you could structure it and give them a new breath of life. We resuscitate.
Let's touch on taxes, which I know is the heartbeat of most of your members as well. Government has already given an indication that they will go ahead and remove the betting tax, the COVID-19 levy, e-levy, and all the rest. First, let me get your quick thoughts on government saying that they will go ahead and remove these taxes. Does that bring you some excitement? I know the bit about the emissions levy, which was never enforced. I stand to be corrected as well. And it looks like it could also be taken off as well. Your thoughts on these, the stance of government that despite their challenges with revenue, they will go ahead with this and look at more of looking at tax compliance to make up for the challenge?
I believe they've studied the books. They've seen the total revenue these taxes bring to the kitty, and then what are the options. They should have stimulated by now to realize that if we take off this X amount of taxes, we can reap it in compliance. And in compliance, what do we do extra? Do you resuscitate some companies? Do you deploy the various innovations? That is the IT system. Today, the GRA, by virtue of a series of policies and intervention, are more robust than they used to be. Would you say that by virtue of that, you could rake in? They have stimulated it. And for them to stand on that position and make a case to IMF in the last week's engagement, I believe they're in a better position to say to us in industry. Of course, it's excitement if you do not pay more taxes. However, we are willing to support government to make sure that we do not get the country to a halt.
Yeah. So there's a flip side to it, as that you take up these taxes, it has implications on revenue.
That's
the
correct.
government needs to stimulate the growth and create the right environment for you and your members.
So therefore, then the president tells the finance minister, cut the expenditure. He knows what he's foregoing, and therefore, presumably, he realizes that his expenditure basket must go down, not at the expense of the companies.
Is spending that bad? Isn't there a problem about where we spend? Because cutting also has implications for an economy that you wanted to expand. If you don't cut well, you could grind everything to a halt.
It's the procurement process. It is the value for money for the various expenditure items. And therefore, spending is not wrong. What is the value you're making on a 4x4 that you buy for your ministers? Why won't you swap the 4x4 for another type of SUV? If it's the same 4x4, why don't you do a central procurement so that you beat down the price for all government agencies? It's the mode of procurement. Spending is not wrong, it stimulates the market. But if you do not get the right value for a 4x4 that you can buy for presumably $95,000 if you do a large procurement and well centralized, as against going to buy it for $185,000, what are you trading off? So it's the modality of the procurement and the value for money that they need to put their eye on. And if they do that, we believe they'll get the right money.
What is AGI putting forward when it comes to the issue about taxes? What is your policy proposal to the finance minister, Dr. Fiscal Atufosun?
The major tax issue here we have tabled is the rationalization of the VAT. We believe strongly that it's distorting a lot of operations. It's two same companies in the same sector. One is important, the other is an SME also importing the same thing, and the one is big and it's also important. Paying the same HS code for the raw materials that come in, and therefore the treatment or the VAT is distorting the market. So that is our first proposal on the tax issue. We believe if you want to do total VAT, 21%, then we do input-output. Don't put in levies that distorts all our operation, and we pass on the cost. And then it becomes the duty of government through its machineries to supervise compliance and collection of the VAT. That is the first one that we believe strongly we need government reforms on. Once that is done, and it's promised on the other COVID taxes and the other betting taxes and the other ones that he seeks to take off, we welcome it. But the VAT, it's a killer in the room, and we need it to be streamlined.
What else, apart from the VAT, what else are you looking at when it comes to the taxes thing?
Okay, and see, because we know the state of government difficulty, besides the tax policy, you need to go and look at compliance in terms of standards, in terms of quality of products that are coming in. Because there are products coming into Ghana from the external market that are not meeting the quality standards. And then they distort other manufacturers' market share. And then therefore, in the year 2001, the Standards Authority with the customs implemented what we call the PVOC, which is the pre-export verification of conformity, such that when you want to import, say, diapers from China or sanitary pads from China, we need an institution that inspects the said product in the factory gates in China before it is exported, so that the shoddy goods, the low quality ones are separated. Once you do that, they will definitely meet the HS code quality and therefore attract the right taxation at the port. When you do that, the local producer needs no concern about undercutting, undervaluation. Your pricing will be correct, and then efficiency becomes the rule of the game to make sure that our local producers are meeting the market share in terms of quality. And the Standard Authority in Ghana also does some form of inspection. So we have the pre-export inspection and the destination inspection. Our prayer is that through the Ministry of Trade, the Standard Authority needs to be strengthened to deploy this conformity certification of all products that are coming to Ghana, from cables, mention all the chains of products that we have, even to rice, even to chicken, such that chickens that are stored over 6 years before they are exported, once you do the conformity certification, some chickens will not come to Ghana. It will give room to what you call players in the local space to produce chicken. And I would think that, and we are coming out with proposals that will not necessarily put financial burden on government. Use policy to redefine the space. And we've given you a couple of it. Bank of Ghana will help us resuscitate a number of our companies through the GARA issue. We also have that we call the GRA Act 891, which is one of the reference point of customs to the Bank of Ghana exchange rate every 2 weeks. It has implication on our cost of production every 2 weeks. It's a policy direction. You need to put in money. There are trade-offs because the exchange rate gains gives government extra revenue. You hear the GRA saying that we have met our target. Exchange rate factor is also part of it. How do we rationalize it? So that the mandate of Bank of Ghana are three: exchange rate stability, price stability, and job creation. Once you could do a few of these things, we strongly believe you will give us in the manufacturing space an opportunity. Government has tabled the Gold Board initiative. That is another initiative we strongly believe will aid in stabilizing the city. Stabilization of the cities.
We'll come back, but just quick still on the taxes issue.
Yeah.
I realize that your members are still complaining about the multiplicity of taxes at the ports.
Yeah.
What has been the proposals to government in terms of if there can be any rationalization?
That's correct.
When it comes to the tax issues at the port, because it has cascading effect on the good production.
That's right.
And the final good on the market. And
that's the major one. If you watch the tax bracket at the port, that constitutes about 51, 52%. The significant one there is the VAT, which is about 21%. And therefore, if you rationalize the VAT first, and you take off a few other taxes, we will become competitive because we pass on the full cost, and government must intensify compliance in terms of collection of its tax, deploying technology.
How committed are your members? Because the same members will come and complain when government is hard on compliance that you are not giving us the breathing space to work, and those compliance measures itself, they are impacting on our ability to produce.
But we're asking for compliance, but the compliance should be friendly. It shouldn't be
Who determines what what is friendly here?
Oh, the relativity is on the ground, and then look, the colleagues that are in the GRA are either cousins, but they need to meet their mandate. They need to meet their tax.
So where do we draw
targets.
the line between GRA being friendly and also not hurting your business?
So it becomes an issue of the promoter of the business, the GRA officer meeting together. Obviously, you have tax difficulties. I have tax difficulties. I go to my my large payout section and have an engagement. And this is the difficulty. And if this is as a result of unforeseen issue, you have capital gains tax that can be audited and it's slapped on you. I go to see him and I negotiate and I give a payment structure. So you be flexible, but then you look at your revenue flows or your cash flow and use that to go and negotiate. You don't avoid them, you engage them. And that's the friendly position that a tax officer will give a promoter of a business that is genuinely in difficulties.
There are some who think that your members, they don't want to really pay taxes. I mean, they really want to reduce their tax exposure. How do you respond to those concerns that your members would, in a smart way, would want to not to pay, but to reduce their tax obligations?
Philosophers will tell you there are two certainties in this world: paying of tax and the subject matter of death. So if you are in the business space and you believe that you don't want to pay tax, then you are becoming fraudulent. Then you are deploying a different
reduce their exposure.
So reducing exposure, it's accounting terminology, it's in law. So if you get the right personalities to aid you to do that lawfully, you have not evaded tax. If it's not unlawful, then you are putting a different cloth. And that's why I said when you're in difficulty, approach your tax officer or tax manager and then engage. They're human beings. They'll put a friendly space to it, and you then make sure you abide by the agreement, because the negotiation gives you space to promise what it is. It could be difficult sometimes when there are cash flow constraints. Go back and engage. That is the proposal. It isn't the case that businesses don't want to pay taxes. But when it gets to the stage that there are plethora of taxes in recent times, and then the business community comes to the table and engage and express their difficulties, and then the decision makers or the managers of the economy turns a blind eye to you because they need to meet some target as a result of their own efficiencies and as a result of their own misappropriation of funds and not meeting their obligations, then we all crash. Because at that stage, the taxpayer has got into the brim that he can't do anything about it. So there's reasonability, and the tax theory tells you once the tax is favorable, you get compliance. Compliance increases. When it is not increases, look into the economy and look at the constraints that you have propounded, and then that is making the taxes difficult.
What assurance have you gotten this time round in terms of your input? Because I know that these complaints about VAT was not just today. So even though we've gotten some assurance that we wouldn't have spike in rates, there won't be no new taxes, even rationalizing the existing tax structure hasn't been today. And I know AGA has made several inputs over the years. What signals are you getting this time around that you are convinced that the push to rationalize the tax structure, especially VAT, come March 11, it will be different?
Well, we've been engaging the gentleman in charge, and tomorrow per se, we are privileged to receive the advisor on economic affairs, who's a tax expert himself. He goes way back, and Sir Tekpe has a friendly relationship with us, same as Guzi that is coming to the table. We have honest discussion with them. We offer them other solutions that we believe could aid our common good. If they do not listen and they go back and do same, the expectation will be as it is, that we'll all crash. The non-compliance will be high. The non-performing loans will be high. And the policy rate will jump anyway. Inflation will jump because the deficit will be demanding, and government will seek to breach the deficit by increasing. And the exchange rate will be a determinant, as stated once upon a time, by the exchange rate will expose you. So there are chains. It's not a one-time fix. There are hard bullets to buy. And now that the entire economy and the entire country said it's a reset time, that is when you take the opportunity to correct the wrongs and take the biggest risks to correct it. And that's why manufacturing is loud, because we believe we are one of the fulcrums to create jobs, to make this economic work. And therefore we are engaging the men that the president has appointed to engage. What can we do? Hope is what defines a man. And therefore, we still keep hope alive and engage them and believe that their good intentions will be well executed for our common good.
Doc, what do you tell those who would also say that budget is not just about the taxes and all the rest? There's also a signaling effect about how the various policies will stimulate investor confidence and all the rest. But also, we shouldn't forget that we are under an IMF program, and the team were in town. It restricts whatever government wants to do. Some are saying that manage your expectations industry, manage your expectations manufacturing sector.
That's what we're calling for innovation. Gold bond is an innovation, correct? Yes, the previous government started with gold for oil, and today the new team says, look, it's a gold board, and that is an innovation in the room. What other innovation can you deploy to aid us leapfrog? And I gave an example that the fifth industrial revolution today is a collaboration between human capacity and machines. And I gave an example. In a meeting today, by virtue of software, as we speak, you could put a phone down, it records us, and in 2 minutes, through efficiency, it gives you good report and decision points. So we have been looking into government policy, and then I deliberately printed a page of highlights of what the NDC manifestos that comes to the table, and I'm asking myself, so VAT regime, how could Arthur Forson deploy the fifth industrial revolution to harmonize the tax bracket? You have 21% VAT. One company is paying a standard rate, one company is paying a flat rate, same sector, with the same data analysis through machine learning at the port of entry. Yafi and Co. and Humphrey and Co. company data can be pulled out all the way to your tax, obligations. And then we could trace it through AI, analysis, data crashing, to indicate whether you are paying the right tax as a flat tax owner or a standard taxpayer. Use innovation in the fifth industrial revolution to correct it and leapfrog. It is not surprising that today in Europe, you see almost every president and every leader seeking to deepen the fifth industrial revolution. Donald Trump is doing the same. And we believe strongly that if you deploy this carefully, and I was excited to see in one of the initiatives, the digital economy, and the number of promises under the digital economy. How do you arrange all these trainees and the outcomes of this into the fifth industrial revolution, which has a collaboration with machines and human intelligence and capacity to deploy in each intervention. And it runs through, even through infrastructure, job creation. And we are willing to engage the ministers and show them what we believe is doable.
Doc, you're talking about AI, and there are the skeptics that are worried. I mean, your manufacturing from those huge firms out there, the deploying of AI and its impact on the human capital. Because if AI could help a production line do about 1 million bottles in a day with little human intervention, then there are some who are worried about the impact on jobs and job creation as well. What do you tell them, those who are out there who are worried that, yes, you are excited about AI and digital economy and all those things, but the fear is that lesser human hands could be needed in that same factory?
So as you deploy new technology, then you do reallocation and reassignment of labor. But the fifth industrial revolution's intent is not to deploy or redundant human capacity, because you need that combination, and that we call it a collaboration between machine and the human's capacity. In the fourth industrial revolution, there was this subject matter of human intelligence, creativity, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things. Did it, to a large extent, bring about redundancy? It calls for retraining and skills redevelopment and redeploy. Yes, some generations will get out, but largely today it's a youth generation, and we call it the Gen Zs, correct? And they are really focused. So reassign, direct their skills. What we seek to do currently in our economy is efficiency. There's a lot of human interventions that leads to corruption, that leads to bureaucracy, that leads to a lot of ills that are drawing our country back. We strongly believe that when you deploy this standard of technology running through all your agencies, and if the president sitting in the Flagstaff House with such deployment of data analysis of the fifth revolution. Yeah. With a key pad, he can easily know what is happening in Cocoa Board. He can easily know what the public financial management actors. He can see which district has posted a contract that is not within the budget. That is speed, that is efficiency. Years back, the Accra population was about 600,000. Today we are about 5 million. You need speed and efficiency to leapfrog and take decisions that will give you money and revenue. Through such, you can sit in the office and see what is happening at the port regarding data crunching. So this is the era, and that is why we believe strongly that the president should see what these other counterparts are doing elsewhere and seek to bring some form of clarity on how to deploy the fifth industrial revolution from the Flagstaff House to manage the entire economy. It will give him speed. I have witnessed in meetings where ministers or decision makers will go to the president and will not give him all the necessary facts, a limited fact. But today, with such level of technology intrusion and disruption, you could get the facts ahead of whichever officer or agency comes to tell you. And in his presence, you could just Google and tell him this is what the situation is. Because you've integrated. Unfortunately, Ghana has done some significant digital economy. We just need to enhance it and leapfrog for decision making and speed. We need speed and efficiency to transform this economy.
But Dr. Dake, I was also trying to get your thoughts about managing the expectations. And do you think that having a fund program and all the rest, there is little resetting that this budget can offer?
That is true. Yes, managing expectation, it's obvious. I saw a clip when a set of youth were following one of the appointed minister, and they were in high expectation. And I was looking at the numbers, and I was wondering what transformation would be that significant within the shortest possible period to give them satisfaction. Nonetheless, we still had hope, because we believe strongly that in the agriculture industry or in the poultry value chain, if you could deploy innovations that will be spelling out to the two gentlemen tomorrow, and also the GRA new commissioner will be joining us to look at tax, to look at policy intervention and export route, how some of our members are currently attracting international funding, i.e. in the poultry value chain. Poultry value chain is essential because when you go way back and see over $400 million is used for import of poultry, granted that you have a work plan for the next 2 years with deliberate interventions, deploying all this technology to support you, creating what we call the cooperatives and off-taker and slotting a number of broilers, you will drop the import basket, it will drop the exchange rate impact, it will drop the debt position. We strongly believe that, look, we could engage government on some sectors, on pilots, to help him create jobs, to reduce the trade vulnerability that the GSS has tabled over the period. How do you do that? We'll engage the ministers and we'll tell them what we believe is doing.
Dr. Zach, when we come back, I'll be getting also from you about what you'll be looking forward to classify that budget as a business-friendly, a manufacturing-friendly, and an industry-friendly budget. This is PM Express Business Edition, engaging the President of the Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdaka, as we talk about the 2025 budget and the expectations of industry and the manufacturing sector. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as I engage the President of the Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdaka, as we talk about the 2025 budget as I engage the President of the Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdaka, on the budget. What is the expectation of industry and concerns that are coming up with respect to the budget and other issues as well? And Doc, I was asking you about what you would see as a budget that is friendly towards businesses, industries, and the manufacturing sector.
We need to contextualize this very question because we are still in an IMF period, and therefore, yes, you mentioned that expectations should be managed. Nonetheless, knowing what the situation is, then the target of the IMF seeking to drive government to increase the tax to GDP from 13% to 18% is steep.
You see that as a big challenge. This is the same government that is saying that we're going to scrap some taxes and all the rest.
So they need to rationalize our taxes, i.e. the VAT that mentioned and a few other ones that they have promised. So once we could see that as ambitious as the 18% tax to GDP is, if we could drive it to compliance of existing tax, including the rationalization of the taxes that we captured, that will be one of the indicators. A second indicator will be the deliberate intervention in commercial agriculture value chain. It shouldn't be the normal practice of where the ministry is just giving some money and they go out there and do the everyday status quo practice. It should be deliberate commercial agriculture intervention where each commercial farmer has over 1,000 hectares of land with a deliberate intervention with targets made such that in a couple of years we could see the trade vulnerabilities of maize and rice and any other product in the value chain dropping. So that calls for a medium-term policy initiative that should be reflected in the budget that could be rolled over into the next budget. We will see consistency in policy. As you do that, you need to strengthen the standards authority, as indicated earlier, with policies of quality, and I mentioned the PVOC and the destination inspection, so that a dumping of shoddy goods, rice kept in silos for 10, 15 years that are brought on our market will be an issue to reverse. And then we look at also for the exchange rate stability. We need to see deliberate innovations that we can easily count and monitor. Yeah, the gold board is exciting to see. We want to see the derivatives and the outcomes of the gold board. Beyond the gold board, what extra issue are you doing? We've mentioned other factors as the GRA Act. How do you deploy that into the basket? You need a number of factors to help you manage that exchange rate debacle that destroys everything that you gain over every 4 years and affects.
So these are the key things you're looking for. When they are done, you would describe
when they are
them
mentioned, that is
and
stage
talked
one.
about.
Because at that stage,
that's
it's an intention.
Proposal.
It's an intention. Now, execution of this, we will need a monitoring and an evaluation system to track. And AGI believes that we have capacity to do that, and we'll engage it privately and share with the president.
These are the key things that you're looking for.
I missed a few others that I cannot easily recall, but I missed a few that comes to my table. An initiative between medium to long-term intervention, i.e. we were very excited about the aluminium integration project because it has capacity to give a value chain in the aluminium industry and some policies that will reverse the export of scraps. Because there are factories in Ghana that could take the aluminium and convert it and create conductors out of it. One policy reversal of exporting of such scrap will deepen the value chain in the cable industry, in the cooking utensil industry, and many value chain. So there are some policies that we have proposed to government that look at it. Because in that value chain, that export drive is part of the issue that is hitting the exchange rate, and we believe I missed many more. And value addition, may I use the opportunity that we want to see clear value addition concept. We used to do this with Guinness, where farmers, we call it the sliding scale, where Guinness takes what we call sorghum from farmers and deliberately gives them technical support, give them technical support in terms of what do you call the agents that go on the farm.
Is it extension officers?
Extension officers. Yeah. And you monitor the products where you need to give them CD-do. Then give an off-taker arrangement. We want to see such value chain interventions replicating in the poultry industry, in the maize industry. Target where you have the vulnerability that is deep, that has to do with food. Once you correct it and the inflation basket drops as a result of food basket, and the GSS has reported on that. They should take the data and factor it in the analysis.
We've seen some marginal stability over the past 2 to 3 weeks as well. Has it brought any relief to your members who are seriously in the import business when it comes to raw materials and all the rest? When it comes to the Ghana city, we've seen some development on the FX market. What do you make of this development? Has it brought some relief to you on the short term?
Yeah, so in one of the engagements with one of the ministers, that's why I had the inclination and the understanding that the gold board is really creating some miracles. And we really want to see it as the time goes on.
Is that what is coming? Because I know the Bank of Ghana has been on the market when it comes to liquidity support.
Yeah.
And there's already a gold purchase program in place.
Correct. So
how is the gold board working?
So we need to interrogate the successes that they are gaining
on the city performance.
That is why I mentioned that in the exchange rate stability, they should outline the clear innovations that are coming onto the table so that we can assess and support government. So
because already there's a gold purchase program.
Great.
So
there's
how
already impacting
a lot of inflows from Bank of Ghana.
However, as that is bringing some stability, we know we have a lot of uncertainties on the utility front, i.e. the energy space, and the exchange rate factor that is derailing the energy and the IPPs, which is also a big, what you call the stress on government regarding energy. And when he walked in, the first issue the energy minister had to tackle was stability and keeping the lights on. How is he handling that? That has some ripple effect on production and the entire economy. So even though the exchange rate is granted some stability, what is happening in the exchange, the fuel space and the energy space is an issue that we need to look at.
But has it brought some relief to you? Because compared to the day where we saw it more gyrating every day, it'll be more than 2 weeks now, at least we've seen some stability sustained.
So don't forget that there's, there's IMF in the room.
Yeah.
And ever since IMF signed on and Ghana got opportunity to enroll on way back 2022 or 2023. We've seen that stability itching on, and that brought some confidence in the.
But it was bad in early January. It was terrible.
Yes, it did. However, currently, that is what we call about the sustainability of that forex.
So you want more? What is going to?
What is driving that stability
to sustain this?
And how then do we test the sustainability? So if it's a gold board that is doing so, if it's other intervention,
Bank of Ghana, we haven't mentioned the market.
So you realize today the governor seeks to bring some scrutiny on the remittances.
Yeah.
The remittances over the last 3 years have been declining. And then what is the cause of the decline of the remittances? And we've engaged the governor. And we said to him, look, there are innovations that you could deploy, robotics that could help you to track companies that are paying cities here and have what you call dollars in there. How do you track those engagements? That's why we keep saying the fifth industrial revolution. Once you could conceptualize and get your problem statement well cleared, and you have data, you could crunch it and you could trace all those ones that are messing up the economy. So we want to see such innovation. So if you seek to do a digital economy, what are the inputs? What are the expected outcomes of the digital economy? One clear one that excites me is the 1 million coders. How do you deploy this? How do we make sure the 1 million coders that you seek to bring out will not be disruptive to the implementers? I see the Ministry of Communication handling it. I see the Ministry of Youth handling it. And then we have DIs, donor agencies, MasterCard, doing a lot of programs regarding coding and etc. How do we centralize it? And have, like the Indians do, have a real policy around it? And how do you develop tools and software to support your remittance policy to help you guard that space? Because remittances today are faster than producing what you call this water. Because once the man takes his card and swipes, the money is coming.
But I get from you that, yes, of course, there have been some stability, but you want it sustained.
Sustainability.
In the medium to long term as well. Right. Let's look at cost of credit and how is the situation as we speak right now. Has it gotten bad, worse? NPLs is a huge issue as well.
Yeah.
For your members, how is the situation right now when it comes to even access, before we talk about the cost as well? What about the access to credit as well, before we look at cost of credit?
So that goes back to the position I mentioned earlier that we are still not out of the woods because government is in the market. And once government is in the market mopping up a lot of T-bills to pay its obligations, it crowds out the private sector. And once that happens, and then the inflows, domestic revenue mobilization is not meeting targets, and government expenditure is high, automatically cost of lending will go up. And then it affects the productive sector, because if its cost of lending, cost of borrowing is high and access is also difficult. It becomes difficult for
a manufacturer to go
through the full haul of manufacturing. So they only prefer to go and import and quickly turn around the capital, reduce workers, and the aggregate effect.
What is the state of the access to credit? Because I mean, your members are well structured, for instance, and if even AGM members are complaining about access to credit, what is the state as we speak right now when it comes to getting access to the credit?
So they were getting access. That's why I began with the engagement that this what GARIA seeks to do with restructuring and insolvent companies that have high gear ratio, because by virtue of your past history, it has an impact on your lending, on your borrowing. And therefore the banks also being careful because of the risk position will prefer to go for government bonds. Until recently, that will also what happened. So it's still access is difficult because government is in the market. And therefore we're seeking GARIA to do one excellent job, engage BOG. How do we bring fresh capital into existing business, distressed businesses, and reposition them to create jobs, whilst we encourage startups and innovations to come in. So it's a gamut of issue that you will not use one directive to solve. You need to monitor it and keep tweaking it until you meet the target.
In terms of the access challenge, what would you tell those who also say that the NPLs has been a concern? The ability of your members to settle these loans back on time has made it difficult for these commercial banks to extend fresh credit to other members who might even have clean books.
But there's a causation factor to the NPLs. If you discuss
that
the NPLs...
that you are not paying your loans back?
That's what I'm suggesting, that if your market shrinks, if the exchange rate factor just behaves as it did recently, and the inflation drives as it did in the previous part, and you're into operations, all these externalities affect you. You may do price adjustment, but perhaps by the time you're doing price adjustment, the exchange rate was stable. However, when it shoots up, erratically like it did, you lost all your capital input in terms of the raw materials you purchased at a price of X when the exchange rate was stable. So there are multiple factors that goes into the NPLs. It's just not an attitudinal issue. It's a culture.
That you don't want to pay back your loans, obviously.
That is
you don't want to pay back your loans.
That is why we are embracing the what was the terminology? Come on, how did I forget it?
I mean, but it has nothing to do with the fact that majority of your members are not paying back their loans.
Once upon a time, until the banking reforms, it's always been a cliche that SMEs do not pay their bills. Until we realized that there were a lot of third-party transactions between bank owners, banks, and there were a lot of defaults. And they were not even feeding the credit bureaus with data. They were also corporates. The informality of our economies is also another factor. So if you go to the formalized companies, they are also overtaxed by virtue of the plethora of taxes. So if you overtax them, and the man is paying over 52% on his import, he goes to borrow at over 35%, that is commercial banks, where it is savings and loan, is over 60%. And you go to pay utility bills, you ask him, how are you managing? So therefore, pricing becomes an issue. So you do not put it on the subject matter of an attitude only or a character traits only. Some do have what we call the insolvent position. And therefore, they go to borrow and they go to pay back because there's a demand notice on him. He goes to borrow. And therefore, why don't you structure all those distressed companies? Give them a breather. Some thought by just giving out tax amnesty is enough. Tax amnesty is not enough. That is why elsewhere we have insolvency laws, and they help you restructure and bring fresh capital in and give you a breather to start again. As we want to restart the economy, look at it in the same concept to aid manufacturing and other enterprises to restart.
Mr. Doc, what is the state of industries as we speak right now? I knew that over the past years you had gone through some struggles, even some of you were forced to ask your workers to stay home and all the rest. As we speak right now, how are the industries doing now?
It's so challenging. We are not out of the woods. The confidence level came up by virtue of intervention, and then some reasonability and stability. But it takes time for that capital that is being eroded, that machineries that have been depreciated, that refurbishment that you need to do, restocking, and then going back for your market share that has been taken away by virtue of liberalized economy, a market economy where demand and supply determines it, and therefore anybody can bring in anything. Regulations, like I mentioned, standardization to the standards authority. How are the products coming to Ghana meeting the quality standards? Is the only price or is quality? A number of issues destroy the foundation. It will take time to remold and get the commanding heights again.
But are we seeing things stabilizing for your members now? Or
Comparative,
still...
and the cliche is that it takes time to build as against time to destroy. So the destruction has been rapid. So it needs time, consistency in policy, consistency in tax policy, interventions in standardization, deliberate interventions to aid the market and the private sector, i.e. manufacturing, to grow.
And has this marginal improvement seen some of your members ask workers who were forced to go home back to work?
So we want to see it in Natu Forson's first budget. What is a medium-term plan beside the short-term interventions that he will outlay? We also want to see the medium-term plan that will give us confidence. We want to see what are the interventions that are bringing the stability of the exchange rate that are sustainable, that will aid him dipping. Once we could see this confidence coming in the correlations and in engagement, then you realize that, okay, partners is, okay, let's hasten slowly, but hey, get back because the return on investment are quite impressive. Nonetheless, how do you stabilize the exchange rate? What are the innovative policies that they are bringing in? And we've offered about 4 of them. Let's see how it plays out.
How is demand and sales doing now as well?
As long as we are in a human society, the white shirt, it's a matter of time you want to change it again. And if you seek to change it again, what happens? Who is producing it? If you can't find it on a local market, somebody imports it. You look at the quality, you look at your money in your pocket. Your purchasing power then decides your demand issue. Whilst you're looking at your purchasing power, you look at the inflationary rate. How is inflation trending down to give you significant purchasing power to go for more demand? That is why we're asking for commercial farming intervention to drop the food basket. Once that is dropping, and it's significant in bringing the inflation down, your purchasing power will be strong and demand will increase. But for that, you buy any shoddy goods, anything that comes on the market.
I mean, to pick that songwriter's lyrics, Apekiana, I mean, have things picked up for you guys?
Well, at this stage is stability. Stability in the exchange rate, which is critical because it defines all our engagement. And once that is the case, and then the food basket keep dropping and is itching down the inflation. You look at those dynamics, then it determines consumption. Instead of the man going to buy Gary, perhaps you prefer to go and buy rice balls and cutting coin with all the accoutrements in it. So that might be 100 cedis as against Gary for 20 cedis. So it's a gamut of issues and demand peaks. There are seasonalities like Christmas, like festive periods that shoots up all of a sudden. But there are consistency that comes in when these dynamics and indices are right, and it gives guarantee market. And I keep going back to the fifth revolution, industrial revolution. It gives predictability of human behavior, the ecosystem that is happening, and then translate it into models and predictive models, and then you could then depend on that to gauge your production and whether you've got to increase production at this time, and then you move on. So let us embrace the new revolution and aid us leapfrog and bring manufacturing.
What is the position of AGR on the 24-hour economy? Because some of your members are already doing that.
That's correct.
There are some who also argue that it should be demand-driven. If the market is not there, trying to incentivize people to produce, where are they going to sell? What is your position on government's 24-hour economy that we understand that very soon everything will be fleshed out for us? What is your thought? AGR thought on the 24-hour economy?
We strongly believe that the 24-hour economy should be targeted. And let those targeted sectors demonstrate and pull the others along. I have one of the companies that's, and in that sector, the demand for diapers and sanitary pads, I think diapers is about 3 million, 3 million pieces per year. We have capacity to produce 2 million. All right? No, the installed capacity is 3 million. Demand is 1 million. Current production is 2 million. Nonetheless, they only need a policy. And I mentioned this policy of PVOC. When you bring in that,
it means that even
policy
in the market, there isn't demand for what you
So carefully.
Yeah. Explain
when you
to them.
therefore tweak the policy,
No, going back to the diaper
same,
dynamics
and I'll
here.
give you another example.
Yeah.
When you go back to that system and you tweak a policy that brings standardization of the imported diapers, if they make the standard, the prices will be same. And if the prices are same, there'll be or they may be cheaper on the local market. The local producers will be cheaper than the imported one because the what you call pre-export verification conformity, or we call it a conformity certification, will sieve off all the shoddy diapers. Once it does, the local production will increase. It will create more jobs, and it can run 24 hours economy. So you need deliberate target for a sector like that. We've done some research that could aid government. Look into that space. Besides the diapers, let's go into sanitary parts. Can we do same? Look at the volume, look at the consumption. Same as poultry industry, the poultry value chain. Tomorrow we seek to demonstrate to Setekpe and Guzitando how somebody who is into poultry and aggregation of the food basket seeks to use that intervention to develop the poultry space. But he needs a policy intervention. This is not money. Take policy, say standards authority, do X, Y, Z for every import. A simple importer will take concern, but you got to look at the ramification or the impact in the long term. So they say, okay, this policy will roll out in 2 years. I'm giving all the importers opportunity to come into the backward integration, whilst I'm deliberately supporting these guys with policy. It is not financial intervention. So we need some policy structures to aid the demand-driven portion of the 24 hours.
And there should be then the element of protectionism within the WTO, because then you're also competing with the inferior goods, counterfeit goods, an open market.
We're not asking for protectionism.
No, I'm just asking that. Is that what you're? Because how do you fit into the 24-hour economy when even the market is not there? So who are we producing for? The
pre-export verification conformity or the conformity certification, which is practiced in Kenya and a few other countries around us, it's compliance with the WTO rules.
Okay, so within the WTO rules, you want some measures taken to ensure that...
And then we ask the standard authority to be firm. There will be fallouts, maybe delay in shipment because your certification process, there will be bureaucratic issues. But you need to look at the larger picture and the threats of the joblessness to the entire nation. And then see how you can segment this policy implementation into 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and deliberately target those factories and those manufacturers and producers of chicken that, look, I've given you 2 years, scale up to 30%. And therefore, you have some negotiations with the importers. You don't kill them because we need the chickens to live. You need to balance it by a cause for deliberate focus and consciousness on those deliberate sectors to start the 24-hour economy for productivity. Because the demand is there. That's why I'm giving the chicken example. If there's the consumption of chicken in Ghana, the consumption of rice in Ghana, the consumption of cables through ECG and many other sectors are phenomenal.
But the demand is there, but the large chunk of these products are coming from outside. So then if you do 24-hour economy, that's why I'm saying that. It comes back to my point that who are you producing for? Because the market is not there.
The market is there.
The market is there, which is being offset by imports and not what you're producing.
So therefore, use the policy to regulate. Give the importers, deliberate importers, some space to deliberately integrate into a backward integration to start doing production. It is policy. And for the 24-hour economy to be perfect, policy tweaks. You need policy tweaks. And that's why we seek to engage the export gentleman.
When you tell those who would argue that it appears that there's a subtle way to force it when the structures are not there, when the market itself is not ready. It's a campaign promise, let's push it. Because I look at your diapers example and it tells me that, listen, we should tread cautiously with this because who are we producing for?
But deindustrialization was underpinned by free market economy. And when the free market economy, and there are practitioners of free market economy like the US, which today are seeking to do Made in America. And what are they seeking to do with Made in America? They are policy issues. So when I slap 25% tax on the products from Canada, it's a policy directive. What do you seek to do for your internal companies? When you seek to do deliberate intervention, when the interest rate is high, and then you seek to intervene to SMEs and you give them cheaper, interest rate. It's deliberate to stimulate the economy. So there are a number of issues that we need to do. Demand has a causation factor. We believe policy is one of them. The rest might be infrastructure, because if you're doing the agriculture value chain, you need storage tanks, you need conveyor belts, you need what you call equipments to do irrigation. Policy. Then funding comes in. Then the private sector sees it as an opportunity. He strikes a PPP. So it is not an easy, it's a one policy fix. That's why we say take some sectors, focus on them, let's see how it rolls out, and gradually we can get back to industrialization.
So by forcing some firms to do a 3-shift and
do you force them? You don't force them. You give them option.
Those are not the real 24-hour economy.
And I'm speaking on the case of manufacturing. The service industry will thrive very well when the manufacturing is running a 24-hour economy, and therefore the security will want to be sure that your operations are safe. So from the perspective of manufacturing, our case is for the 24-hour economy to meet its optimum gain, targets, tweak policies that need to be tweaked to grant the local producers the space. That's why government will say that, hey, in the energy space, we seek to do a metering system that will give you an off-peak pricing and high-peak pricing. And that's a policy initiative that will drive all the producers to off-peak, because on the off-peak, the price might be cheaper, because anyway, I'm paying capacity charge for the off-peak period at a price. Why don't I negotiate? So it is policy direction and policy tweaking. When you do that, industry realizes it's cheaper. I can cut my cost by 20%. Why won't I encourage myself and see whether I have the infrastructure to produce at night than to produce in the day? Or what is the rationale in putting the margins together? It's not a one fixed issue. We've got to have a mindset now that this is what the order of the day is. What is the best we can do out of it? And some members of ours have developed some brilliant concept. And in our engagement, even today we had an engagement at National Council level when they threw in their proposals. And the pharmaceuticals believe they have a concept they want to share. The value chain of poultry, the value chain of diapers and the cables, and many others say, okay, we can look at this from this particular angle. What do we do differently? We are asking government, change this policy. If we tweak it this way, we believe we can get demand stimulated.
National economic dialogue. I mean, is AGI participating? Some are saying that third, fourth budget is 11th of March. Is it enough for consensus to be built on the economy for it to carry it forward? How do you respond to those who also make an argument that it is too early before the budget?
That is a valid position. Yeah. I mean, budget is on the 11th. You seek to make inputs. AGI does inputs into the budget every year. And I have on my tab, I have a number of inputs that we've offered into the budget. So they are not significantly new issues that we would advocate again. We now advocate it in the context of the policy shift. And one major policy shift is the 24-hour economy. And that's why we argue. So we say, okay, Mr. President, if you could look into this tax, if you could rationalize the VAT, this is what will happen to these sectors. Can we consider that? And if you look at that, he's already suggested in his manifesto document that I'll rationalize VAT. So therefore I picked it. So I picked it, I look at my policy papers. So when I will go to the economic dialogue on taxation, we say, so what is he doing about tax? If he's already captured it, we are on the move. If he hasn't, then we make a proposition. Is it possible you could capture it now, or you bring in a midterm review? You want to go stimulate it and see what the impact is. So for the budget as of March 11, it is tight. Most of the issues will not be new. Perhaps we just want to affirm that they are there. The new innovations will then make sure that we engage them for the midterm budget review so that the economy moves on whilst we correct the issues that are coming.
There's some who are saying that the government promised some stuff in the manifesto. They've been voted on it.
Yes.
There's a clear mandate to work.
Yes.
And some are questioning the relevance of this whole national economic dialogue. What do you say about that?
That is why I give a clear example. So when we pick the synopsis of what is in the
Because everything is in the manifesto.
It's in the manifesto.
That is, now people have voted on the manifesto.
They voted on the manifesto.
Why do you do a national dialogue? For what?
So therefore, then there are experiential knowledge. I'm a practitioner in the business space. So yes, you have a VAT already in your budget. How do you seek to implement it in the budget? So we go to the economic forum, and we are doing an engagement before the economic forum. And then we say, okay, your 24-hour economy sounds interesting. Initially, we say, what is it? Now we say, okay, a few sectors believe they can take advantage of it. And they come to the table and say, Mr. President, we can take this, we will do X, Y, Z. I say, can you get demand? He say, yes. When you tweak this law, I can get demand. Doc. So we keep engaging, and we trust that before the economic forum, tomorrow we'll have some good deliberations with the managers of the economy and zero in our proposals and see how we can tweak.
Doc, your final thought, AGR, your final thought going forward on the economy, resetting and ensuring that the focus on industry and manufacturing sector is not lost. Your final thought.
Resetting agenda. We're looking out for a positive outlook. That should be demonstrated by the budget. We pray that the consultations should still go on. Most of the fundamental issues that we seek to drive are not new. We believe the managers of the economy know how to go around this. The role of Bank of Ghana in stimulating the economy through what we call the printing is an issue that the IMF has directed how to go about that. The zero funding of government, and therefore, if a president has said to the finance minister, cut. So we look forward to the cut, but the cut should be such that those areas could be converted into PPPs, and therefore we could still meet those infrastructure deficit that government sought to fund. So government shouldn't go around seeking to do everything, because in the real sector, they can't do everything. We are in to share with them. Let's see medium-term plans, consistency in policy, deploy the fifth industrial revolution to assimilate data, decision-making. The president should, at a flip, could see what is happening in every sector, and he should take action, sanction his own when they go wrong, because definitely we know in a human society, the greed will come in, some will be too ambitious. He must be firm. He has another opportunity to demonstrate commitment.
A more targeted cut, because if you don't cut well, you cripple the economy.
Yeah, if you don't cut well, you cripple the economy in terms of consumption, and the ripple effect and job creation will be an issue. So therefore, let's target areas that we can offload to the private sector and allow them to bring in private funding, well-structured, with the minority shareholding also being monitored by virtue of the Companies Act 2019. The minority rights are there. Where government has minority rights in various establishments, they should look at it and monitor and bring the gains to government.
This is PM Express Business Edition, engaging the President Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdake, in terms of industries. What do they want in the 2025 budget that will be presented by the Finance Minister, Dr. Ato Forson, on March 11, 2025. Another debate will still go on in your homes and your offices about what should be done to ensure that we get an industry, a business-friendly budget when the Finance Minister goes to Parliament to present its economic policy to the House. The name has been George Yafe. Have a great day. This has been PM Express Business Edition. Thanks so much, Doc. I appreciate your time so much. I hope you'll join us again after the budget to do a scrutiny about whether it's industry-friendly budget or it wasn't an industry-friendly budget.
If it is not, we'll tell them. If it is, we'll apply.
All right. We look forward to having you again in the studio. This is PM Express Business Edition.